Jake Martinez stepped off the transport ship and felt his stomach drop. Not from fear, but from the weird gravity that made everything feel lighter than it should. He grabbed the wall to steady himself and looked around at the biggest space station he had ever seen. Nexus Prime stretched out in every direction like a metal city floating in space. The walls were white and clean, with lights that changed color as different aliens walked past. Jake had studied pictures of this place for months, but seeing it in person made his mouth fall open. A creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms bumped into him. It made a sound like wind through leaves and kept walking without stopping. Jake realized he was blocking the path and moved to the side. The hallway was full of aliens. Real aliens. Jake had seen them on video calls and in training materials, but this was different. A group of beings that looked like giant spiders with crystal shells clicked past him, talking in musical tones. Two floating jellyfish-like creatures drifted by, their bodies glowing soft blue. A tall, thin alien with 4 legs and no arms used its long neck to operate a control pad. Jake pulled out his data tablet and checked his directions again. He was supposed to find the student registration desk, but everything looked the same. The signs were in symbols he could not read. Even with his translator device, "You look lost." The voice came from behind him. Jake turned around and saw an alien about his size with 6 arms and soft blue fur covering its body. Its face had 2 large black eyes and a small mouth that moved when it talked. "Yeah, I am," Jake said. "I am looking for student registration." "You must be the human everyone is talking about," the alien said. Its translator made its voice sound friendly. "I am Nixal. I think we are roommates." Jake felt relief wash over him. "Jake Martinez. Nice to meet you." Nixal used 2 of his arms to point down the hall. "Follow me, I will show you where to go. This place is confusing for new students." They walked together through the busy corridors. Jake tried not to stare at the other aliens, but it was hard. Some were huge, as big as Earth elephants. Others were tiny, no bigger than house cats. Some floated, some crawled, and some moved in ways that made no sense at all. "Is it true that humans come from a dangerous world?" Nixal asked as they walked. "I guess," Jake said. "Earth has its problems, but we manage." "My homeworld is very peaceful," Nixal said. "We have never had wars or natural disasters. The weather is always perfect and all the animals are gentle. I cannot imagine living somewhere dangerous." They reached a large open area with a high ceiling. In the center was a desk managed by one of the floating jellyfish creatures. Jake could see its organs moving inside its clear body, which was both amazing and gross at the same time. "Jake Martinez, species human, homeworld Earth," the creature said when Jake approached. Its voice came from speakers around the desk since it had no mouth. "You are assigned to Section 7, Pod 23. Your classes start tomorrow morning." The creature handed Jake a datapad with his schedule and room assignment. Jake looked at the list of classes: Advanced Comparative Biology, Galactic History, Xenocultural, Studies and Applied Physics, all taught by alien professors to alien students. "Come on," Nixal said. "I will show you to our room." Section 7 was in a different part of the station, connected by a long, moving walkway. Through the clear walls, Jake could see space and stars stretching out forever. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their room was small but comfortable. It had 2 beds, 2 desks, and a shared bathroom. The beds were weird shapes to fit different alien bodies, but Jake's looked normal enough. Nixal's bed was more like a nest with 6 small pillows. "So what is Earth really like?" Nixal asked as Jake unpacked his few belongings. "I have heard rumors, but they sound too crazy to be true." "What kind of rumors?" Jake asked. "That your planet has deadly weather and poisonous animals. That the ground shakes and mountains explode. That your water is dangerous and your air burns things." Jake laughed. "Well, some of that is true, I guess. We do have earthquakes and volcanoes, and, yeah, our air has oxygen in it which makes fires burn hot, but we are used to it." Nixal's large eyes got even bigger. "You live with fire air and exploding mountains?" "It is not as bad as it sounds," Jake said. "Humans are tough. We adapt. I have lived my whole life on a world where the temperature never changes more than 2 degrees, Nixal said. The most dangerous animal on my planet is about as scary as your Earth rabbits. I cannot imagine dealing with real danger every day. Jake finished unpacking and sat on his bed. It was softer than he expected. What are the other students like? Should I be worried about anything? Nixal made a sound that the translator turned into a sigh. Most are nice, but some think they are better than others. The Velkari students think their species is perfect because their world has no problems. The Quarath are very old and wise, so they look down on younger species like humans. How young are humans compared to other species? Jake asked. Very young. Most species have been traveling in space for thousands of years. Humans have only known about the galaxy for 3 years. Some students think you do not belong here. Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. He had been so excited to be chosen for this program that he had not thought much about how other students would see him. Earth was new to the galactic community, and humans were still learning about the universe beyond their solar system. Do not worry too much, Nixal said, noticing Jake's expression. Professor Keltar chose you for this program. He is one of the smartest beings in the galaxy. If he thinks you belong here, then you do. Jake nodded, but he still felt nervous. Tomorrow he would be sitting in classes with students from dozens of different worlds, learning from professors who had studied the universe for longer than humans had existed as a species. What is Professor Keltar like? Jake asked. Scary smart, Nixal said. He looks like a giant bug with 4 arms, but do not let that fool you. He has studied more alien species than anyone else alive. He can look at any creature and tell you everything about how it evolved and why. Great, Jake said. No pressure. Nixal laughed, which sounded like wind chimes in the translator. You will be fine. Just be yourself. And maybe do not mention the exploding mountains thing right away. Jake smiled despite his nerves. He was representing all of humanity at the most advanced school in the galaxy. Tomorrow he would find out if Earth's newest species was ready to learn from the stars. Jake woke up to the sound of strange music coming from Nixal's side of the room. His roommate was doing something that looked like dancing, moving all 6 of his arms in smooth patterns while humming. Morning exercises, Nixal explained when he saw Jake watching. My species needs to move all our limbs every day or we get stiff. Jake got dressed in his academy uniform, which was a simple gray outfit that fit all different body types. The material was smart fabric that adjusted to whatever species wore it. On Jake, it looked like normal clothes. On Nixal, it had extra sleeves for his extra arms. They walked to breakfast together in the main dining hall. The room was huge, with tables that could change shape to fit different alien needs. Some students sat on normal chairs. Others floated above their tables, and a few lay on special platforms while they ate. The food was another challenge. Everything was designed to be safe for all species, which meant it was bland and mushy. Jake missed the taste of real Earth food, but he was hungry enough to eat the gray paste that was supposed to be protein. There is Professor Keltar, Nixal said, pointing across the room with one of his arms. Jake looked and saw a creature that made his skin crawl. Professor Keltar was tall and thin, with 4 arms that ended in sharp points. His head was triangle-shaped with huge eyes that had hundreds of tiny lenses like a bug. His skin was dark green and looked hard like armor. He is looking at you, Nixal whispered. Jake tried not to stare back, but he could feel those compound eyes watching him. Professor Keltar was talking to another teacher, but his head was turned toward Jake's table. It was creepy. After breakfast, they walked to their first class together. The advanced comparative biology classroom was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The walls were covered with screens that could show 3-dimensional images of anything the teacher wanted. The desks were arranged in a circle around a central platform where holograms could appear in full size. Jake counted 20 other students in the class. He recognized some species from his training, but others were completely new to him. There was a group of 3 aliens that looked like living crystals, humming to each other in musical tones. A student with pale blue skin and no hair sat perfectly straight in his chair, looking bored. 2 creatures that resembled earth lizards but with 6 legs whispered to each other in clicking sounds. Professor Keltar entered the room, and everyone, went quiet. His forearms moved independently as he set up his teaching materials on the central platform. When he turned to face the class, Jake felt like he was being studied under a microscope. "Students," Professor Keltar began, his voice coming through the room's translation system with a slight electronic tone. "Today we start our main project for this term. Each of you will present your homeworld's environment and explain how your species adapted to survive there." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had prepared for this, but sitting in a room full of advanced students from ancient civilizations made him feel very small. "We will begin with our newest member," the professor continued, pointing one of his arms directly at Jake. "The human from Earth." Every eye, sensor, and optical device in the room turned toward Jake. He could feel his face getting hot as he stood up slowly. His hand shook a little as he activated his datapad and connected it to the room's holographic system. "I am Jake Martinez from Earth," he began, his voice sounding too loud in the quiet room. "Earth is a planet in the Sol system, about 26,000 light-years from the galactic center." A holographic image of Earth appeared in the center of the room, showing the blue and green planet rotating slowly. It looked beautiful and peaceful from space. "Earth is in what we call the habitable zone around our star," Jake continued. "But habitable does not mean easy to live on." He heard a few students make quiet sounds that might have been laughter. The pale blue student, who Jake remembered was called Valkyrie, rolled his eyes and leaned back in his chair. "Our planet has extreme temperature changes," Jake said, bringing up a climate chart. "The surface temperature can go from -89 degrees Celsius to +71 degrees Celsius." Now the laughter was louder. The crystalline students were humming in a way that sounded mocking. The Valkyrie student, whose name tag read Zixthan, shook his head and smiled. "That is impossible," Zixthan said out loud, his voice carrying across the room. "No intelligent species could evolve in such extreme conditions. You are making this up to sound interesting." More students joined in the laughter. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but also with anger. He looked at Professor Keltar, who was watching silently with those compound eyes. "I am not making anything up," Jake said, his voice getting stronger. "This is just the beginning." "Oh, please," said one of the crystalline students, whose name tag read Silva. "My species has studied planetary environments for over 10,000 years. What you describe would kill any complex life form." "Maybe your species is not as complex as you think," Jake said before he could stop himself. The room went very quiet. Silva's humming stopped completely. Zixthan sat up straight in his chair, his pale blue skin getting darker with what Jake guessed was anger. "How dare you," Zixthan said. "My people have built perfect cities on a world with ideal conditions. We have never had to deal with the primitive struggles you claim exist on your backward planet." "Primitive?" Jake repeated. "You think dealing with challenges makes us primitive?" "Students," Professor Keltar said, but his voice was not loud, enough to stop the argument that was starting. "Yes, primitive," Silva chimed in, her crystal body ringing like a bell. "Advanced species control their environment. We do not live like animals fighting against nature every day." Jake felt something snap inside him. These aliens, who had never faced a real challenge in their perfect lives, were calling humans primitive. They were laughing at Earth, at humanity, at everything his species had fought to achieve. "You want to hear about primitive?" Jake said, his voice carrying across the room. "Let me tell you what it really means to live on Earth." He clicked to the next image on his presentation. It showed Earth's ocean, dark and deep, with numbers showing the incredible pressure at the bottom. "Our oceans cover most of our planet's surface," Jake said. "They are over 11 kilometers deep in some places. The pressure at the bottom would crush your perfect bodies into nothing." The laughter was dying down now. A few students were looking uncomfortable. "The water is so cold at the bottom that it should freeze, but it does not because of the pressure. No sunlight reaches the deep ocean. It is completely dark down there." Jake brought up images of deep-sea creatures that made several students gasp. Fish with huge teeth and glowing eyes. Creatures that looked like nightmares. "But life exists even there," Jake continued. "In the most impossible places on our planet, life finds a way. Sixten was no longer smiling. Silva had stopped humming entirely. Even Professor Keltar was leaning forward, his compound eyes focused on the images. "You think that sounds impossible?" Jake asked, looking around the room. "I have not even started talking about the really dangerous parts of Earth yet." The room was completely silent now. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He had their attention and he was not going to waste it. "Let me tell you about volcanoes," Jake said, clicking to the next image. Mountains that explode with liquid rock hot enough to melt metal. He looked directly at Zixthon and Silva. "And then I will tell you how humans not only survive on Earth, but how we turned its deadliest features into games we play for fun." Jake looked around the classroom at the faces staring at him. Some were still smiling, but others were starting to look worried. He clicked his datapad and brought up a new image that made several students lean back in their seats. "This is Mount Vesuvius," Jake said. The hologram showed a massive mountain with smoke coming from the top. "It is one of our active volcanoes. The rock inside is so hot it turns into liquid and shoots out of the ground." Zixthon crossed his arms. "Volcanoes exist on many worlds. This is nothing special." Jake smiled. "This volcano destroyed entire cities, buried them under ash and burning rock. The people had no warning. One day they were living normal lives. The next day, they were dead under tons of volcanic material." He clicked to the next image. "But humans kept living near volcanoes. We built new cities in the same dangerous places. We study the volcanoes now. We can predict when they will explode, but we still choose to live next to them." Silva made a sound like breaking glass. "That is foolish, not brave." "Maybe," Jake said, "but it gets worse. We have earthquakes that can level entire cities in minutes. The ground shakes so hard that buildings fall down and roads crack open." The hologram showed video of an earthquake in action. Buildings swayed back and forth like trees in the wind, then crashed to the ground. Cars disappeared into cracks in the street. "The worst earthquake in our history killed over 800,000 people," Jake continued. "But we rebuilt. We learned to make buildings that can bend instead of break. We created warning systems, and we kept living in the same dangerous places." Professor Keltar was taking notes on a datapad. His forearms moved independently, writing and adjusting the holographic display at the same time. "Our weather is trying to kill us too," Jake said, bringing up images of massive storms. "We have hurricanes with winds over 300 kilometers per hour. They are so big you can see them from space." The hologram showed a hurricane from above, a giant spiral of clouds bigger than most of the alien students' entire countries. "These storms bring enough water to flood entire regions. The winds can pick up cars and throw them around like toys. A single hurricane can destroy thousands of homes." Jake clicked to the next image. "We also have tornadoes. These are smaller but more dangerous. They are spinning columns of air that move at 500 kilometers per hour. They can appear without warning and destroy everything in their path." The video showed a tornado ripping through a town, picking up houses and throwing them into the air like they were made of paper. "But humans do not hide from these storms," Jake said. "We have people who drive toward tornadoes on purpose. They get as close as they can to study them. We call them storm chasers, and they do it for science and sometimes just for fun." Zixten was no longer smiling. His pale blue skin had turned almost white. "You chase the deadly storms?" "Some of us do," Jake said. "We also fly airplanes into hurricanes to measure them from the inside. We have weather stations in the most dangerous places on Earth just to collect data." Jake brought up images of deserts that made the room temperature feel cold just looking at them. "These are our deserts. The surface temperature can reach 70 degrees Celsius during the day, hot enough to cook food. At night, the same desert can drop to below freezing." He clicked to show people walking across sand dunes, their faces covered to protect them from the sun and wind. Nothing should be able to live in these places, but humans do. We cross these deserts on foot for sport. We race vehicles across them. We have cities built right in the middle of the hottest, driest places on Earth. Silva's crystal body was no longer humming. She sat perfectly still, her optical sensors focused on the images. "Then we have the opposite problem," Jake continued, showing images of snow and ice. Our polar regions are covered in ice all year. The temperature stays below -40 degrees Celsius for months at a time. The hologram showed endless white landscapes where nothing seemed to move. The wind in these places can freeze exposed skin in minutes. One mistake, and you die. But humans live there too. We have research stations at both poles. Scientists stay there for months studying the ice and weather. Jake clicked to show people in thick coats working outside in the snow. Some humans even consider these frozen places beautiful. They go there for vacation. Vacation? Nixall asked from his seat. They go to the deadly cold places for fun? Yes, Jake said. We have sports that can only be done in the cold. We slide down mountains on pieces of wood or metal. We race across ice on thin blades attached to our feet. We jump off cliffs on long pieces of cloth and fly through the air. Professor, Keltar looked up from his notes. You jump off cliffs? We call it skiing and snowboarding, Jake explained. People pay money to go to the most dangerous mountains and slide down them as fast as they can. Sometimes they crash and break bones, but they go back and do it again. Jake brought up images of Earth's rainforests. These look peaceful, but they are full of things that can kill you. We have snakes whose bite can kill in minutes, spiders that are bigger than your hand, plants that are poisonous to touch. The hologram showed colorful frogs that looked harmless. These little frogs have enough poison in their skin to kill 10 adult humans. The native people used to put this poison on their arrows for hunting. But humans live in these forests too, Jake continued. We study the dangerous animals. We use the poisonous plants to make medicine. We have learned to turn the deadliest parts of our world into tools that help us. Jake clicked to show images of Earth cities at night, glowing with millions of lights. We built our cities knowing that earthquakes, storms, and floods would try to destroy them. We planned for disaster and built anyway. Every human grows up knowing that our planet is dangerous, Jake said, looking around the room. We learn about natural disasters in school. We practice what to do when they happen. We live every day knowing that our world might try to kill us. The classroom was completely silent now. Even the background humming of the station system seemed quiet. But we do not just survive on Earth, Jake said, his voice getting stronger. We do not just hide from the dangers and hope they go away. He looked directly at Zixthon and Silva. We decided that if our world was going to be dangerous, we would become dangerous too. Jake clicked to his final image. It showed humans doing things that made the alien students gasp out loud. People climbing straight up the sides of mountains, diving into deep ocean trenches, running through burning buildings, and flying through the air with nothing but fabric wings. We turned Earth's deadliest challenges into our favorite games, Jake said. And that is just the beginning of what humans can do. Jake looked around the silent classroom and realized he had their complete attention now. No one was laughing anymore. Zixthon was staring at the holographic display with his mouth open. Silva had stopped making any sound at all. Even Professor Keltar was leaning forward with all four arms crossed. You want to know what makes humans different? Jake asked. We do not just survive these things, we seek them out. He clicked his datapad and brought up an image that made several students jump back. It showed a human standing on top of a mountain peak, arms raised in victory with nothing but empty air and clouds below. This is Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, Jake said. It is 8,949 meters high. The air up there is so thin that humans cannot breathe normally. The temperature never goes above freezing. The wind can knock you off the mountain. Jake clicked to the next image. It showed a long line of people in thick coats, waiting in the snow. People wait in line for months, just for the chance to climb this mountain. They pay thousands of credits. Many of them die trying. But every year, hundreds of humans climb Everest just because it is there. That makes no sense, Zixthon said, his voice barely a whisper. Why would anyone choose to do something so dangerous? Because it is dangerous, Jake said. Because it is hard. Because most people cannot do it. Humans do not climb mountains because we have to. We climb them because we want to. Jake brought up images of humans underwater, swimming next to creatures that looked like sea monsters. Remember those deep oceans I told you about? The ones with crushing pressure and no light? Humans go down there in small metal containers. The Hologram showed a tiny submarine surrounded by the black water of the deep ocean. We have explored the deepest parts of our oceans, places where the pressure would crush your body instantly. We go down there to see what lives in the dark, to study the underwater volcanoes, to push the boundaries of what is possible. Jake clicked to show humans swimming without any protection, just masks and air tanks. Some humans swim down to incredible depths using only their lungs. They hold their breath and dive deeper than should be possible. The current record is over 200 meters down. Impossible, Silva said, her crystal body making a sound like cracking ice. No biological being can survive that pressure. Humans can, Jake said. We trained our bodies to do it. We learned to slow our heartbeat, to use less oxygen to fight against the pressure that wants to crush us. Jake brought up images of people surfing on massive waves that towered over them like moving mountains. Remember those storms I told you about? The ones with waves big enough to destroy ships? Humans ride those waves for sport. The hologram showed a human on a small board, racing down the face of a wave that was taller than most buildings. We call it surfing. People travel around the world looking for the biggest, most dangerous waves they can find. They ride waves that could kill them instantly if they make one mistake. Professor Keltar made a sound that the translator could not interpret. His compound eyes were focused intently on the images. Those deserts I showed you, Jake continued. The ones hot, enough to cook food humans run across them. We have races where people run for hundreds of kilometers through the desert heat, carrying their own water and food. The images showed humans running across sand dunes, their faces red from heat and effort. We also drive vehicles across deserts, at incredible speeds. We race motorcycles and cars through places where breaking down means death. We do it for sport, for competition, for the thrill of pushing our machines and ourselves to the limit. Jake clicked to show the polar images again, but this time with humans doing impossible things in the ice and snow. Those frozen places that should kill any living thing. Humans live there by choice. We have people who spend their entire lives studying the ice. They sleep in tents when the temperature is 50 degrees below freezing. The hologram showed a small tent surrounded by endless white snow and howling wind. We also play games in these places. We slide down mountains on pieces of wood and metal, going faster than most vehicles. We jump off cliffs and fly through the air. We race across ice and snow just for fun. Jake brought up images of extreme sports that made the alien students gasp and make sounds of disbelief. We throw ourselves out of flying aircraft with nothing but a piece of cloth to slow our fall. We jump off bridges and buildings with elastic ropes tied to our feet. We race down mountains on bicycles at speeds that would kill us if we crashed. This is madness, Zixthon said, his voice shaking. Your entire species is insane. Maybe, Jake said with a smile, but we are alive, and we are free. Jake clicked to show images of human cities built in impossible places. Cities on the edges of volcanoes. Cities in the middle of deserts, cities floating on water, cities carved into the sides of mountains. We do not just adapt to our environment, Jake said. We make it adapt to us. We build where nothing should be able to exist. We turn the most hostile places on Earth into homes. The hologram showed humans working in conditions that should have killed them. People in protective suits working next to lava flows. Scientists taking samples from active volcanoes. Engineers building structures in the middle of hurricanes. We do not wait for our planet to be safe, Jake continued. We go out and make it safe. We predict earthquakes and build stronger buildings. We track storms and warn people to get out of the way. We study volcanoes and learn when they will explode. Jake brought up images of human technology designed to work in Earth's harsh conditions. Vehicles that could drive underwater, aircraft that could fly through storms, buildings that could bend instead of break during earthquakes. Every piece of human technology is designed to work in conditions that would destroy the machines of most other species. We build everything expecting it to face the worst our planet can throw at it. Jake looked around the room at the stunned faces of his classmates. You think your species are advanced because you live in perfect conditions. But what happens when those conditions change? What happens when your perfect worlds face a real challenge? Humans learn to thrive in chaos, Jake said. We learned that the best way to survive is not to avoid danger, but to become more dangerous than anything that wants to hurt us. Jake clicked to his final image. It showed Earth from space looking beautiful and blue and peaceful. This is our home, he said. It tried to kill us for millions of years. It threw everything it had at us. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, storms, predators, diseases, and disasters we do not even have names for. Jake looked directly at Professor Keltar. And we won. The room was so quiet that Jake could hear his own breathing. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft humming of the station's life support systems. Earth made us strong because it was never kind to us, Jake said. It made us smart because we had to be smart to survive. It made us brave because being afraid meant dying. Jake turned off the holographic display and sat down. And that is why humans are here, in this classroom, learning from species that have had millions of years to develop their technology and science. He looked around at his classmates, one more time. Because Earth taught us that being comfortable is not the same as being strong. The silence in the classroom stretched on for what felt like forever. Jake could see his classmates looking at each other with expressions he had never seen before. Fear, amazement, and something that might have been respect. Professor Keltar slowly stood up from his position at the front of the room. His forearms moved in a pattern that Jake had learned meant deep respect among his species. The professor's compound eyes reflected the light as he looked directly at Jake. In 40 years of studying life across the galaxy, Professor Keltar began, his translated voice carrying a tone Jake had never heard before. I have cataloged the environmental conditions of over 400 inhabited worlds. The professor paused, looking around the room at his students. I have studied species that live in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres. I have examined life forms that thrive in the radiation fields around neutron stars. I have documented creatures that exist in the vacuum of space itself. Jake felt his heart beating faster. Where was this going? But never. Professor Keltar continued. Have I encountered a planet that would be classified as more hostile to intelligent life than Earth? Zixthon made a choking sound. Silva's crystal body began humming very quietly, like wind through broken glass. The conditions you have described should prevent the evolution of complex life entirely, the professor said. The temperature variations alone would kill most species before they could develop basic intelligence. The geological instability would make building civilizations impossible. Professor Keltar walked closer to Jake's desk. Yet humans not only survived these conditions, they became the dominant species on their planet. And more remarkably, they learned to enjoy the very things that should have destroyed them. Jake felt his face getting hot, but this time it was not from embarrassment. It was from pride. Silva suddenly stood up, her crystal body ringing like a bell. Human Jake, she said, her voice coming through the translator with what sounded like shame. I owe you more than an apology. My species has lived for over 50,000 years in perfect climate-controlled cities. Our world has stable weather, no natural disasters, and peaceful animals. She paused, her optical sensors focusing on Jake. I cannot imagine surviving even one day in the conditions you have described as normal childhood experiences. Your normal is our impossible, said another student Jake had not heard speak before. It was one of the lizard-like beings with 6 legs. My species considers a 5-degree temperature change to be a major environmental crisis. Zixthon slowly stood up next, his pale blue skin now showing dark patches that Jake realized was embarrassment among the Velkari. I spoke without knowledge, and I am ashamed, he said. My homeworld's greatest challenge is seasonal variations of 3 degrees. We have never faced real danger. He looked directly at Jake. I now understand why humans were accepted into this program, despite being such a young species. You bring knowledge that none of us possess. Over the next few days, Jake found that everything had changed. Students who had ignored him before now approached him with questions. The dining hall conversation stopped when he walked by, not from hostility, but because other students wanted to hear more stories about Earth. Nixal was amazed by how popular their dormitory room had become. I feel like I'm living with a celebrity, he said as another group of students knocked on their door. Everyone wants to know what humans are really like. The questions never stopped. How do humans survive in places with no water? What do you do when the ground shakes? How do you predict when mountains will explode? Is it true that humans swim with dangerous predators for fun? Jake found himself invited to study groups where his perspective on survival and adaptation helped other students understand concepts that had been difficult for them. Species that had evolved in perfect conditions struggled to understand how life could adapt to constant challenges. Your insights are valuable, Silva told him one day as they worked together on a project about evolutionary pressure. You understand things that we never had to learn. During the next class period, Professor Keltar made an announcement that surprised everyone. I am restructuring this course, he said. Instead of simply comparing different homeworlds, we will be studying adaptation under extreme conditions. Jake Martinez will be assisting me as a research partner, sharing human perspectives on survival strategies. Jake felt his mouth fall open. A research partner? With the most famous xenobiologist in the galaxy? The human experience represents something unique in our database, Professor Keltar explained. A species that not only survived hostile conditions but learned to thrive in them. This offers insights that could benefit every species in the galaxy. After class, students surrounded Jake with more questions than ever. But now the questions were different. They were not asking if his stories were true. They were asking for advice. My species is planning to colonize a world with unstable weather, said one student. What would humans do to prepare for that? We are studying how to survive equipment failures in dangerous environments, said another. How do humans stay alive when their technology stops working? Jake did his best to answer, but he realized that what seemed like common sense to humans was revolutionary thinking to species that had never faced real challenges. 3 weeks later, Jake received a priority message from Earth during his morning meal. The message header made him smile before he even opened it. What is it? Nixal asked, noticing Jake's expression. Jake looked around the table at the friends he had made. Zixton was there, along with Silva and several other students who had become regular dining companions. Humanity just established our first permanent research station on Europa, Jake read from his datapad. It is one of Jupiter's moons. The surface is covered in radioactive ice. The temperature is minus 180 degrees Celsius and there is no atmosphere. The table went quiet. Jake continued reading. The mission commander described the environment as moderately challenging and said the crew is excited to start their 2-year research mission. Silva made a sound like wind chimes. Moderately challenging. Radioactive ice with no air to breathe, Zixton said slowly. And humans call that moderate. Jake shrugged and took a bite of his breakfast. It has water and the radiation levels are not too bad. We have dealt with worse. Professor Keltar, who had been walking past their table, stopped and shook his head, and what Jake had learned was amazement among his species. Humanity, the professor said, is going to change how this galaxy thinks about the impossible. Jake smiled, thinking about home. That beautiful, deadly, wonderful world that had tried to kill his species for millions of years and had only succeeded in making them stronger. Earth taught us that the best way to face a challenge, Jake said to his friends, is to make it look easy. He looked around the table at aliens from worlds where perfection was normal, where challenges were avoided, where safety was guaranteed. Maybe that is something the galaxy needs to learn. As Jake finished his breakfast, he received another message notification. This one was from the Academy administration. He had been selected for an advanced research program studying extremophile organisms. The message noted that his unique perspective on survival in hostile environments made him an ideal candidate. Jake laughed and showed the message to his friends. 6 months ago, these same aliens had laughed at him for claiming that humans could survive on Earth. Now they were asking him to teach them how to survive in places they had never imagined living. What will you research? Nixal asked. Jake thought about all the impossible places on Earth where life had found a way to exist. Deep ocean vents, frozen Antarctic valleys, radioactive exclusion zones, acidic hot springs. I think I will study How life finds a way to thrive in places where it should not exist, Jake said. It seems like something humans know a lot about. As they walked to their next class together, Jake realized that he was no longer just representing humanity at the academy. He was teaching the galaxy that surviving was not enough. Sometimes you had to learn how to make the impossible look like fun.